I think we could start. Patrick, do you want to say anything or am I just going with it?
Not really.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess in summary, I always have something to say.
Of
But
course you do.
in summary, all of this developed from feedback, and we continue to develop this plan for feedback. So I appreciate everyone getting involved in this process. At the end of the day, we're going to bring it to the town, and we're going to let you decide. So I feel like Kim has really done a great job putting this all and working it into legal terminology and looked at all avenues. So I'm going to let you take it from here, Kim. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. So what I am going to do is share my screen. I'm going to go through the ordinance in its current form, and similar to when we did this in person, and I went through the last version. I've worked very closely with the town attorney on this, so there's two documents that I'll share with you, and one is the ordinance and the other is the application. There were some comments early on about the way it's written as an ordinance, but the ordinance is not meant to be written like a friendly neighbor. It's a legal document that has a certain verbiage to it, and the application is a much easier uh, way to proceed. So Julie has told me I can share, so I'm going to do that. Okay, very good. Okay, assuming you can all see that. The nice thing is I'll be using my cursor to go through this, so bear with me. Take notes on questions if you have, but I'd like to get through the whole thing so that you may find that your question is answered as I go through another section. But the first portion of this of the short-term rental ordinance is a list of definitions. And we have made adjustments to certain statements. In particular, in the purpose section, the last sentence, there was something else added, leading people to believe that the town wasn't going to accommodate longer term rentals. And so we removed it so there was um, uh, no issue with that because that's a long history of Roxbury, particularly allowing rentals that go up to 3 months to over a year. So the definitions, I'm not going to go through each of those. That's just, oh, except the only one will be hourly rentals because that's something that other towns haven't added in yet. And we thought that it was important. And I'm going to back up a little bit and just say that through this process, the first iteration of this ordinance was taken from towns using kind of a pretty much a cookie cutter approach to what a short-term rental ordinance would look like. And through the process and listening to residents, those who are not in favor of short-term rentals, those who run short-term rentals, and everyone in between, uh, that this can be tailored town by town. And that was a very important component of this. So hourly rental, the rental
Kim,
for, yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I won't do it again. There's a couple of people trying to get in. They said that the host, oh, I think they just got in. They said they were waiting or they couldn't get in. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll mute.
Thank you. All good. I'll wait. Just wait a couple of minutes. I'll check with Julie. We're good? I'm going to assume yes. Okay, hourly rental. The rental for compensation direct or indirect. This is associated by number of people wanting to rent some portion of their property by the number of minutes or by the hour. And these facilities include, but are not limited to, homes, pools, tennis courts, basketball courts, dog exercise yards, and the like. And it's interesting to see that a couple of residents brought this up, that people are renting out their yards as dog parks. And we realized that that was something that we didn't think neighbors would want. next door to them. So that's it for the definitions, and they're referred to in the document. So we are, and again, this is a draft. So if I use terms that talk about it as a done deal, please understand that's not the case, that the residents will vote on this, but as I go along. So permit, we are requesting that people fill out an application for a permit. And anyone who's currently using their property for short-term rental, would have to apply within 30 days of the effective date of this, once it's passed. A big change, and this is number 3. I'm going to read this, and I have a couple of additions here because we had 2 people who submitted written documentation, which is going to be put into the permanent file. And we do have a book actually at the town hall that people can look at for those who have written in their opinions. But number 3 right here, no more than 2 short-term rental permits may be held by the same owner, regardless of the number of Roxbury properties owned by that owner. For this purpose, partnerships or entities owned by the same individual or individuals shall be considered as commonly owned by a single owner. So that, and I have added in here for clarification, 2 words, okay? That only 2 short-term rental permits are available to all such related parties. However, existing owners who provide evidence that they had rented out more than 2 properties, and this is not 2 buildings, this is 2 properties in Roxbury for short-term rentals, at least twice during the period of 1 year prior to the effective date, shall be grandfathered as to the maximum number of short-term rentals allowed, so that such owners may be permitted to obtain permits for more than 2 short-term rental properties in Roxbury at one time, provided that short-term rental permit is obtained for each such property. Okay, so that's a change. And we really, we talked about it, and we want to be fair to people. If it's been in existence and the town has said no for all these years, that they should have that opportunity. The difference here, though, is as those properties are sold or no longer are used as short-term rentals, they cannot then be put back into use as short-term rentals by that owner. And eventually, that as people progress, that they will only be able to have 2. So they're not going to be able to continue with the same number if they sell those properties or no longer use those properties as short-term rentals. So 2 will be a max eventually. Short-term rental permit, decided that it would be the 1st or the 15th of the month, make it easy for the person who's issuing permits. It's non-transferable. Renewals, a permit application requirement. The application itself, you'll see, I think, has everything in it that you would need to fill out, and it's quite clear. But we would be requiring a completed signed permit form and an affidavit, and that'll be explained a little bit farther down. Primary point of contact and alternative point of contact. So we have numbers and people to contact if there's a problem. A permit fee, and which is more the initial permit and then less for each subsequent renewal. This is a big change too from a prior draft. Fire safety building code compliance. Originally, we had made the suggestion that someone would go in to check to see that this was in compliance. Now we are saying the owner shall provide a signed affidavit attesting to the fact that the short-term rental is in compliance with these things. So it's really up to the owner to do that. And that is working smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguisher, functioning windows and doors. This is making sure that people are safe in a space that you're renting out. And then the authorization in number D of the right but not obligation of the town officials to perform inspections. And that's when safety violations are reported. Originally, it said reported or suspected, and people were right. Suspected was just a bit too wishy-washy. So we got rid of it, and this is going to be complaint-based. There'll be a release of liability in the application that you are releasing. The town shall assume no liability by issuing a short-term rental permit or of regulating short-term rental use. A diagram. I changed this to a number 7, emergency exits. It said a plan, and people were misunderstanding, thinking that meant like a blueprint plan, but this is just a diagram. It can be hand drawn, just detailing emergency exits for the rooms if rented individually and from the building if rented as a whole. Number 8. I think I like this. That the owner or short-term rental operator and point of contact will use their best efforts to assure that renters will comply with restrictions set out in the ordinance and not disrupt neighborhood, interfere with neighboring property owners. We know that not everyone is perfect, so we know that you will do your best. And that there's an information packet that should be made available at the property. Each person who's renting does not need to receive one, so it's not multiple copies. It's just one copy that would be available at the rental site. Okay, the availability of a primary point of contact. This person, whoever that is, would be expected to take immediate action to address any issues that arise. And that's by phone or text, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, while it's rented. And that doesn't mean the person has to be on the property at all. It means that they just we will have access. Someone will have access, either the person who's renting or the short-term rental official. Information packet, and this is what I was talking about, that would be available to those who are renting, so that they have information, and that is maximum allowed occupancy, noise and use restrictions, the location of off-street parking, location of trash receptacles, and that's, the larger trash bins that, where to put them so bear don't get them. Primary point of contact, and this is available again to the renters. Emergency services, the diagram about emergency exits, and then explaining no trespassing, disturbances, and complying with the ordinance. The occupancy limit. During the application process, the short-term rental official will determine what the maximum occupancy limit of the each unit would be based on the information that the owner provides. And in here, we're saying that's 2 people per bedroom, unless further restricted by the health or fire code or the short-term rental official based on the nature of the particular short-term rental. Someone brought up about, couches and whatnot, but, ultimately it's about the health and safety of the people who are renting and the amount of space provided, and sometimes that may have to be looked at. But just like when you rent or when you have a studio apartment, that there's multi-use spaces at times, and so there's some flexibility there, and it's written in that way. And children under the age of 10 don't count toward this limit. This is just saying that there's sleeping areas and that people have a bathroom. The restrictions on use. We had a town attorney and I had some fun with this, and we did a lot of research on some area towns and in other states. Virginia has a pretty active short-term rental policy usage. So restrictions on use. It's the intent of the chapter to allow short-term rentals to occur in a manner consistent with the quiet nature of the town of Roxbury's residential areas. Accordingly, short-term rental restrictions on use include, without limitations, the following. No commercial type uses. Commercial, nonprofit organizations, banquets, retreats, concerts, conventions, seminars, and the like are prohibited. Noise and activity at a short-term rental consistent with the typical level of noise and activity of a neighborhood in its vicinity. People use lawnmowers, etc. It's not like people have to be absolutely quiet, but it should be similar to what is in the neighborhood. Shouldn't be inconsistent. No disruptive parties. No short-term rental operator, renter, or other person shall allow, cause, or participate in a gathering, party, or other event at a short-term rental which is unruly or disruptive to the surrounding quiet residential setting and character. Family reunions and similar family gatherings that are in keeping with typical residential uses are permitted if disclosed to and consented to by the short-term rental operator. It's important that, we know people use short-term rentals for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the way it was written before outlawed that, and we totally understood. And so it's important, though, that those who are offering for rent, the short-term rentals, that they know that people are going to be doing that. So we just ask that they let you know. No open invite parties or events. Parties or events advertised on social media or otherwise to the public or large groups of people are not permitted, nor shall the short-term rental be advertised as a party house. That takes care of, by far, the events that took place in July. No trespass. This is just respectful use of the property. Don't trespass on other people's property. Number 6, concerts. No concerts or bands or similar uses, including those that include sound equipment making music unduly audible, adjacent properties. And then we ask that this be posted, and attached to the application, I have already added all of these posted in the 12-point font that we ask short-term rental owners to put up, that people will be able to see. Parking only on the property. Short-term rental operators' responsibility. The rental operators are held responsible for ensuring that their properties are not being used as party houses or creating similar nuisances. And they should do their best to take measures to prevent that from happening. No signs permitted, no hourly rentals, and I refer back to the definition that I read earlier. Properties used as short-term rentals should be in good standing with other state and local ordinances and regulations. Inspection, again, we have the right to inspect. Insurance, it is the owner's short-term rental operator's responsibility to carry adequate insurance to cover potential liabilities. No documents need to be attached to the application, but you are signing saying that you are aware of all of the things that are required in the ordinance. The application process, the application would go to the short-term rental official, and it would issue or rescind a short-term rental permit. They're going to review it. They have 21 days from the date the application to make a decision and approval. Application denial, really, if it's incomplete, you have 30 days. Sorry, Bishop, you have time to complete that. If the owner is delinquent on property taxes, that's an issue, and any outstanding zoning, wetlands, health code, building, or fire safety code violations. And then the last 2 sections here are actually pretty, they're much more normal and straightforward than it may seem. This is not made up by us. This is a lot of this is taken from state statute. in particular, the enforcement and citation hearing process and C, but the short-term rental enforcement officer has the authority to revoke or suspend a permit if violations are found. And this is in order, really. So you should look at it this way and not jump right down to number 4, citation, which goes with a $250 fine. You have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 before you are cited. And that's important for you to understand. That's the way the law works. So if you're in violation, you have a certain amount of time, 30 days to correct the violation. If it's not corrected and you're still in use, it can be revoked. And if it's revoked and you're still, you still continue, then there's a citation and you cannot operate without a permit. And then citation, this is really taken out of the Connecticut General Statute, Section 7-152C, where you can find this information that's just been adapted for this particular ordinance. And that's where a mediator would come in and you would have the short-term rental owner would have representation, and it's the town and the owner would get together and a mediator would be called in to help make a decision. And then that's about it for that. I can wait to go through the application and answer questions. And if you can use the hand, it's easier because I can't see everybody. So I'm going to go with the first hand I have, and I have Daniel.
Hi, thank you for this. And I guess I have 5 thoughts, which are offered without any particular view. This strikes me as a perfectly reasonable ordinance, and these are really just technical questions that might be helpful or might not, and if they're not helpful, just ignore them. First, on the question of the town's liability, the language you have now has the owner release the town from liability. But the language also suggests that the town has taken some measures to ensure that the rental is compliant with various things that are related to occupant safety. And I wonder whether the town has thought about whether the tenants might have a claim against the town. And the release of the liability by the owner against the town will not help with that. So I wonder whether the town, for example, would like to include language that the owner has to indemnify the town for any claims made by tenants against the town on the basis of this ordinance. Just a question for you all to think about.
Thank you.
A second observation, you have language that somebody who has been previously using multiple rentals, the language you have is provide evidence. As a technical matter, that's extremely weak, as opposed to something like demonstrate. So lots of things are evidence which don't show something to be true. They just tend to make it more likely to be true.
Gotcha.
And so that's something to think about. Your related party rules have multiple properties owned by one party through various organizations, partnerships, and things. But often people who are concerned about related parties are also concerned about spouses or children or parents or others who own. And as I heard what you read, if somebody wanted to, they could have 10 properties, 2 owned by them, their spouse, and each of their 3 children. And that would be in conformity with this language. And so there's going to be lots of examples of language, for example, from tax codes that try to get at related parties. And if that's something you care about, you might adopt that language. I don't know. 2 other small things, and this is more substantive. I don't know if you thought about weddings and if you have a view about weddings. But it seems like weddings are permitted under the language you've given, and that may be the right answer, maybe the wrong answer. It's another kind of event that's like other events you seem to be concerned about. And finally, what's odd about the enforcement mechanisms is it does not include any sanction for operating without a permit.
Okay.
It says that if there's a citation if you fail to cure. But what happens if you just brazenly operate without a permit?
Okay. I think that goes right to the citation, but I will check with the town attorney.
Because the language right now seems to suggest that it's a citation if you, and is it really just a $250 citation if you operate without a permit brazenly? Because that might not be much of a,
It would be
as the
each day.
citation was for failing to cure. This is somebody who might be in good faith, but if someone in bad faith wants to just operate.
Right.
Anyway, so
Okay.
I'm a resident. To disclose, we have a place. We do occasionally rent it short term. We don't have a strong view about whether we should be entitled to do that or not. If we're allowed, we will do it. If we're not allowed, we won't do it. But we're interested in the question. This strikes me as completely reasonable. But there are some technical things that might be worth thinking about if you're the town.
Great.
And I'm
Thank you
sorry
very
if
much.
I'm intruding in an unwanted way.
No, thank you very much.
Great feedback. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. And so just so I can say this, anyone who has questions, I'm going to let everyone who wants to speak have their one time, and then we can go back if someone has another question or comment. And again, I can't quite see. There were hands up and now. Okay, Lauren? And you're muted. Lauren Booth?
Hi,
There
sorry,
you
I was trying
Hi.
to get it off. Sorry, I came in a little late, so forgive me if you've already discussed this. One of the things I noticed was that you said a maximum of 2 people per bedroom, but 2 of our rooms have 2 queen size beds in the room. I don't understand why that's a problem.
As I said, also in that the, here I have to find it. The properties, the short-term rental enforcement official can take a look and see what each situation is, because it's written in a way where it says 2 per bedroom and occupancy. Sorry, I'm supposed to know where this is. I've written it. But right now I'm not seeing it. So anyway.
But is that really necessary to even have it in there? It seems like a hard thing to enforce, and I'm not sure what's the point.
The point is so that there is some sort of foundation, and that people don't say, I'm going to have in this two-room house, I'm going to have 15 people. And we want to make sure that there's health and safety issues that are taken care of. Also including health, meaning the septic. When a bedroom is put in, it's decided at the time that it's built, the size of the septic will be able to take that into consideration. So,
You don't think owners can manage that?
not always, no. I'd like to say yes, but we're finding that that isn't always the case. And but it's written in a way where the short-term rental official can take a look and make that determination. And that's a reasonable thing. Okay, anyone else with a question? Again, you're gonna have to raise your hand or and I can.
Kim, do you see Daniel Shea and Victoria and Kevin with their hands up?
I can't see them.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
I'll just go to Daniel Shea.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Hi, everyone. I just very quickly wanted to say thank you because the updated draft certainly seems to have accounted for a lot of the feedback shared on previous drafts, and the tenor of the ordinance as drafted currently, I think, seems significantly less hostile I think that was what we were talking about last year, and seems more in keeping with the quiet nature of Roxbury than just feeling like hostile to newcomers. I will say I happen to personally have no issues with the 2 per bedroom for my property. However, I do think the language as drafted seems to say it's that I think I understand the spirit that you're getting at, Kim, with the way that you've explained it in the meeting. As written, it seems like it will be max 2 unless even less than 2. So I think it's a language thing, and I think
I see it.
I think it's really solvable. But
Yep.
because what you're saying makes sense. We start with a base of 2 or thereabouts. Unless really you can demonstrate perhaps that the home is suitable for more than 2. I will also say that the I think the septic concern does feel a little bit just like a little bit like searching for a reason for a justification. But ultimately, if I were designing the ordinance and my goal was 2 or 3 or 4, it's like 15 to 2, sure, 7.5 per, maybe not, but 2 per. There's a big delta between 2 and 7.5. So I might not go down to 2 per room as like the starting point, maybe on average 4 per bedroom. Like just because that would cover reasonably a reasonable use, but not necessarily like, it just, if I were, you put in language to prevent against the extreme, you don't go to the extreme low when you do that kind of language.
Yeah, I understand the language thing that you're talking about with the 2. I can see that for sure.
That's my piece. I will yield my time.
Thank you. And Patrick, again, I can't see everyone, so if you can just.
Okay, so Victoria.
Hi, everybody. Guess I can lower my hand. Yeah, I'm Victoria Rakes. Nice to meet all of you. I haven't attended one of these meetings before. I own a house in town, and I occasionally rent out the barn on the property, and it's been really nice and have had no issues with it, thankfully. I agree generally that these also do seem like a pretty reasonable suggested ordinance. But I also take a little bit of issue with this occupancy limit, the default of 2 people maximum subject to some kind of inspection, or I don't know what you mean by that actually. But like we have a very large bedroom, and it fits both a king size bed as well as a trundle situation. And that has allowed like a young couple with their, 11-year-old kid, or 3 friends having a girls' weekend to rent out the barn, and there's loads of space. So it's truly not like a health situation. I understand you said you will, talk with each owner on their applications once they're submitted, but I also would agree with what Kevin just said about perhaps consider having a limit that's a little bit higher than 2 per room, because not all structures are built in like a traditional small bedroom that houses a queen bed. So we're more a larger bedroom, and I just don't think that's, a reasonable restriction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see Kevin, is that right? Kevin's next?
You can see him now, great.
I can, yeah, it's tough sharing. Okay, Kevin Wheeler?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thanks. And thanks for this. I still feel that this is a lot of hoops and regulations and attempts to control things that don't need to be controlled. I understand a desire to prevent out of control parties, but a lot of the things in here will have no impact whatsoever on someone doing something like that. I generally just don't really understand why, for things that are not specific to Airbnbs, why we would have 2 separate sets of safety standards, occupancy standards for a property just because it's being used as an Airbnb versus being used as something else. I mean, why should it have this if it's for an Airbnb or but not this if it's been rented out for a month? I mean, it seems like safety standards and zoning and occupancy and all these things should apply to just all properties. And I think there are enough zoning regulations and building codes and certificates of occupancy and septic inspections and sign-offs, et cetera, that govern all this stuff, and we don't need to duplicate this sort of stuff in an Airbnb ordinance. The ordinance should just be about short-term rentals, and that even goes to, I mean, not that it's a particular bother of mine, but I mean, it even goes to things like, you know, regulating people trespassing. We already have laws about trespassing, so we don't need to, you know, re-legislate that stuff. And then specifically, I mean, I think you've heard enough people mention the occupancy limit. I mean, that's a real problem for smaller Airbnbs. I mean, I understand what you're trying to do with big houses and so forth, but I mean, for small Airbnbs, it's really restrictive, and I'd wager that a lot of, you know, I mean, people probably have fewer bedrooms by some official definition than you think, and you know, it's just a crazy restriction to sort of outlaw sofa beds. And as it is written at the moment, as I can't remember who pointed out, I mean, it says, you know, maximum 2 per bedroom or less. It doesn't say anything about any flexibility to say, oh, hey, you've got a 2,000 square foot property that you've configured as, you know, as a studio, so thus maybe we should allow it to be a little bit more than you know, 2 per bedroom that you don't have. So that's my main objection. I've got sort of slight issues with the sort of the police state implications of the 24-hour notice inspection. I just don't think 24 hours notice to, you know, to access my property and inspect it is just reasonable. I mean, if I lived in the Soviet Union, maybe I'd expect that sort of thing, but I mean, I just don't think it's kind of surprising. But I mean, I'm not intending to do anything crazy wrong, so it's not a huge objection, but it just seems it sort of contributes to the, you know, to the I mean, hostile is a strong word, but to the sort of the sentiment of this is designed to drive Airbnbs out of business, out of town. I think that was probably it. And the only other thing, I guess, is the, you know, the fees. I don't love the fees. I mean, we're not employing any more people or incurring any more costs, so I'm not really sure where the fees are going. And then the $250 per day or per, yeah, I think it's per day of infringement. I mean, I can't really imagine what I would do wrong, but if you know, it turns out that, you know, one of the tenants had thrown away the map of emergency exits a month ago, and I didn't have that up for a month, and in theory I'd be liable for $8,000 of fines because of that. I mean, I'm sure, I know you're not really going to enforce that, but I just don't like to have things on the books that in theory could allow you to fine me $8,000 for, you know, not having a map of emergency exits up for a month. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Just to clarify that one part so that people can make sure that that's clear. When I went through the violation section, remember that I said that it starts with number 1 and then goes to number 2 and then number 3 and then number 4, which was the citation and the 250. And that's after the 1, 2, and 3 were not followed. So it wouldn't be that you didn't have your diagram. I just want that to be clear. You can read that through again. Thank you, though. Trevor?
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you. Kim, amazing work. Thank you for putting this together and dedicating so much time and energy to this. And to Daniel Markovitz's earlier comments on the ownership paragraph, only because in our practice, we have seen the tax returns of people who own multiple corporations, LLCs, trusts, or have ownership interests. And I would agree with Daniel that maybe that language could be strengthened. He mentioned family members, but also folks, maybe the phrase, not just own another, you know, LLC or corporation, but also have an ownership interest in. Because if I have an LLC that I'm sole member, but I have a 5% ownership in that LLC over there, and that LLC, you know, has multiple members, then, you know, I'm not saying there's a nefarious reason why people would try to do that, but actually they freaking do. And I have, in the last, since COVID, I've read probably 700 or 800 tax returns for our business. And I've seen the crazy shit that people do. So I would agree with Daniel, that language needs to be strengthened. Lastly, just to the folks here who are Airbnb folks, we respect you and we're happy that you're here in our town, but we're also not happy that you're here in our town. And for those of you who may not know the history of how this ordinance has been developed, it came as a result of an absolutely horrible situation right across from Maple Bank Farms farm stand. And I mean, the entire town was in an uproar about it. And those of us who are here to live quiet residential lives, not be landlords, we were outraged. And we asked our Board of Selectmen to take some action on this. And what you're seeing is a regulatory response to that, which, again, because we're small business consultants, we hear that complaint for business owners all the time. Oh my God, regulations. But regulations are created for a reason. And Kevin, to your comment about trespassers, I will tell you that 5 days ago, 2 knuckleheads were walking in the land trust property right behind my stone wall, who were clearly renting, short-term rentals of weekend renters of the property next door to us. And they're marching around in there in an area where nobody walks. It's like off limits to people walking around. There are no trails. Mind you, Roxbury has like more trails than like any other town around. And these 2 idiots are walking around in an area which is actually filled with wildlife. And we are here to, enjoy that part of our living. And if you notice the language in the regulations, there's a frequent repetition of the language of kind of the atmosphere and the manner of how we live here in the town of Roxbury, which again is that outrageous episode last year, which caused all of this regulation to come forth. It's just really a matter of respect for those of us who are not interested in rentals and who just want to live a quiet country life. And again, to Patrick and Kim and Russ, our first and second and third selectmen, you folks are awesome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Trevor. We have any other hands?
Howie. I see Howie's
Howie.
waving. You got to unmute yourself though, Howie. Yeah, that's the next step. You got this. Maybe it's not a touch screen.
Maybe the bottom left.
While they're figuring that
Yeah.
out. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I got
You
it.
can talk. was
I
gonna
got
say
it.
something.
We tried to have our granddaughter here so she could help us along, but she had to go to bed at 8 o'clock. Oh, anyway, right in the beginning, I missed something where it said 2 permits. That's 2 permits per year?
No, 2 permits per property. So normally, and this is the only town, Roxbury right now is the only town that is proposing this. Every other town, if they have restrictions, they will only allow 1 property, a permit to be given out for 1 property in town. But we do have people in town who have more than 1, and they use it for short-term rentals. And so some have more than 2. And so we added that in just out of respect for what has been happening here for many, many years. So it's a property. So it's like if you have, you have a house and an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, an apartment. You can rent both of those out on the same property. If it's 2 parcels, and you own both parcels and they each have a house on it, you can rent out to those 2 properties. So that's why in the ordinance, it discusses it as properties. So that's each one is separate. So they're allowed a permit for each property.
And so your permit is for the year?
It's for the year, yes.
So you're just registering you have 2 things that might be rented?
Correct.
Right.
And on
Okay.
the application, you have to state, those addresses and.
Right. Yeah. Okay. How about people are talking about weddings? They can be kind of big, but I guess
Yeah,
that,
I mean,
that comes under family.
I think weddings are different. I think that was a good point, and just have to take a look at the language. Tonight's another night for us to hear what you have to say and, look at it and see if there's some things that we can continue to improve. There's no rush on this, so, we're going through this very, very carefully, so.
Because a lot of people have receptions at their house for weddings. We had our daughter's high school graduation here, and there were probably 40 people here, but we have a big property out back. It wasn't a big deal.
Right, right. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet? No? Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Anybody want to see the application? You don't have to. It doesn't matter. Okay, I think we're good. If no one else has anything else, you can always send a note to any one of us or the three of us on the Board of Selectmen, and we read everything and get back to you. Absolutely. And we will be bringing this back up again with the comments at our next regular Board of Selectmen meeting. I will take a look at the comments and contact the town attorney on a couple of items I think were really important that were brought up to make things clear. But I thank you so much. This has been a group effort by far. A townwide response is so important because this is for all of us. So no further questions or comments. I thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good night.